New York Times versus Sullivan. The case focuses on the 1964 landmark freedom of the press case, New York Times versus Sullivan. The court held that the First Amendment protects newspapers even when they print false statements, as long as the newspapers did not act with actual malice. A unanimous decision by the United States Supreme Court ruled in favor of the New York Times. In order to prove libel, a public official must show that the newspaper acted with actual malice, that is, with the knowledge that it was false or with reckless disregard for the truth. The parties were New York Times Company versus Sullivan, and Sullivan felt that his reputation was damaged by the New York Times because he said that the damaged his reputation in the community. What are the elements of defamation? Since Sullivan was a public official, what did the plaintiff have to prove in this case? The court held that a public official suing for defamation must prove that the statement in question was made with actual malice. The phrase refers to knowledge or reckless lack of investigation rather than its ordinary meaning of malicious intent. He had to prove that the publisher of the statement in question knew that the statement was false or acted in reckless disregard of its truth or falsity. What was the U.S. Supreme Court's decision, and why did it make that decision? A unanimous decision by the United States Supreme Court ruled in favor of the New York Times. The court ruled that the First Amendment protects the publication of all statements, even false ones, about the conduct of public officials, except when statements are made with actual malice. Gertz versus Welch. In 1968, a Chicago police officer, Richard Nucio, shot and killed a young man, Ronald Nelson. After the officer was convicted of a second-degree murder, the victim's family retained a lawyer, Elmer Gertz, to represent them in civil litigation against the officer. A publication of the John Birch Society ran a series of articles falsely alleging the existence of a communist conspiracy to discredit local police agencies and thus facilitate their replacement by a national police force that could more effectively implement the dictatorship they planned to impose on the country. Allegations were made about Gertz and the Nucio case. It claimed that he had orchestrated Nucio's conviction. Who are the parties in the case? Was the petitioner a private person or public figure? Parties were Gertz versus Welch. Elmer Gertz was a lawyer. At first, in the case, he was a public figure until evidence was presented. What were the alleged defamatory statements about Gertz in the American Opinion article? It claimed that he had orchestrated Nucio's conviction and that he was a member of various Communist Front organizations. It further implied that he had a lengthy criminal record himself and used various anti-communist terms of abuse. What was done to confirm the accuracy of these allegations against Gertz? Accuracy of this was for Welch to provide proof. How did you think these allegations affected Gertz's reputation? Impairment of reputation and standing in the community. What would you have done differently than Welch to avoid lawsuit? I would have required proof before publishing. What is your state's defamation law? Oklahoma State law is false or malicious, unprivileged publication by writing, picture, or effigy, or other fixed representation to the eye, which exposes any person to public hatred, contempt, ridicule, or obloquy, or which tends to deprive him of public confidence or to injure him in his occupation, or any malicious publication as aforesaid, designed to blacken or vilify the memory of one who is dead and tending to scandalize his surviving relatives or friends. How can you relate what you've learned from the Sullivan and Gertz cases to your future work in the communications industry? In my current profession, we as employees do not publish anything unless it has been scrutinized by our legal counsel.